already wanted to be sitting at the table with us. The Queen of Extreme, Francine.
I'm sure. There you go. All right.
So it's a funny thing to me because I always thought Robbie just had a room full of mirrors, but apparently, Robbie, you did have posters of Francine, like literally in your room growing up.
You know, okay, I'll admit it. I tried to pass that off when you were on our podcast. I tried to pass that off and say Matt was the creep that was obsessed with you. But I mean, I wasn't a creep. I was young. I was in middle school, high school. But I did have a poster of you on my wall. I'm not gonna lie. And
A bathing suit poster?
It was a few different ones.
Okay.
And I have probably paid for your autograph at least once or twice at ECW.
So we
shows.
met before
We did.
you were
Yeah, I just didn't want to remind you of it. I was embarrassed of it.
Do we have a picture together?
We do, but I didn't want to
You
bring
need
it.
to.
I had the Francine 469 shirt.
That's a bestseller. Yes, it is. Very proud of that.
Do you know the shirt I'm talking about?
I do.
Did you have it?
I did not. They don't make it in my size.
I can get you one of your size. Yes.
So,
Wait. You have to put the picture on Twitter, and then we'll take a picture today, and we're going to do a side by
Okay,
side.
and we'll do it as a throwback. We'll do it as a throwback.
We could have been married. You didn't make a move. We could have been married, right? That's crazy.
Guys, I could have been married to Francine. A round of applause for that. It's getting hot in here. I'm starting to blush a
Even
little
though I'm
bit.
like 80 years older than you are, but that's
We
okay.
can change the subject.
you know, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but Robbie has the exact same hairstyle in both pictures. So you're going to find that. Now, Francine, you joined us on our show, Why, and you had one of our most memorable interviews. You talked about just getting, choke slammed by what? I'm sorry, I don't get it. And talking about taking total elimination, all the stuff you had to do. But looking back, though, your career is something you don't regret. You're grateful for the career you had and the experiences you had. Is that correct?
I am grateful for it, yeah. I feel like I had to do all those things to get to where I am today. So I appreciate the opportunities I was given.
So Robbie told me earlier today that basically when he wrestles and he does mostly chokes, that's mostly what he does.
I do some punches and kicks also.
So punches, kicks, and chokes.
He does the least amount possible, is what you're trying to tell me.
Do you think, Robbie, you could have survived in that era where they take this young lady who just fresh out of a little bit of wrestling school and they're having her choke slam through the mat? Do you think you would have made it through that era, or would you be selling popcorn out front?
What do you guys think?
No.
I think he would have been like Talboy. Remember Talboy? I think he would have been like Talboy.
I actually think, even though I don't show my toughness, I've went through a table once in 18 years, so I think...
I have you beat.
Okay, you definitely have me beat, but I think I would have. I think I could have survived. Tommy Dreamer told me I could have survived, and then he made fun of me, but...
So, you were telling me earlier, Francine, that you might not make it back to ECW Arena too many times because you actually, we talked about all this stuff on our podcast, but you actually had a hand at promoting a show and running a show, and that's kind of related to why the Queen of Extreme, the Queen of ECW, the Queen of the ECW Arena really won't go back there anytime soon.
So in 2009, I had a benefit show because I don't know if you guys know, but my father and my sister both had cancer. They both passed away like 4 days apart from each other. And so we wanted to do like a benefit show to raise money for cancer research. And I wanted to do the arena just because that was my home and I knew everybody there and I just thought it would draw. And I had a partner with me, and my partner was the money man and I was the connections that I knew. How's that? I knew all the boys and everything.
ECW.
So long story short, I paid $2,500 to rent the arena, and I was told I couldn't handle tickets on my own. The arena was going to handle the tickets for me. Me being green, not knowing anything about promotion, I agreed. I said okay. They also told me I couldn't bring anybody in-house to tape the program. They had somebody that they were going to record the show. They also didn't want Atlas security. They had their own security. So I said, okay, fine. I honestly thought after the $2,500, that was all that they made. and I thought the rest of the gate was gonna go to us. I paid, some boys worked for free, some of the boys required their full price, some gave me a discount, you know how it works. I paid for all the flights, we paid for a hotel, transportation, we had it catered. I mean, it was a nice little indie show.
So how much money do you end up making out of all
I
that?
didn't make anything. I didn't make anything because there was $5,000 missing from the gate money. And then after I'm 8.5 months pregnant, so I have cankles the size of Wyoming. It's 110 degrees in there because it was back when it was the ghetto arena and there was no air conditioning. And I go home, and about 2 or 3 days later, I get a phone call from somebody. Did we have text messaging back then? I don't even remember. And they said, your show is being sold on the internet. I said, how can my show be sold? I didn't even put it up. It's my show. Here, it was on one of the sites, and they were already selling it. So I called the gentleman that ran the site, and I said, look, it's my show. You need to take it down, or else I'm suing you. He took it down, he sent me all the DVDs that were made, and he cut me a check. And here, the guy that was at the arena sold my show to this internet company without my permission.
And so that kind of led to kind of bad feelings between you and some people maybe who might still be around at ECW.
I was told he still works there, just me. I can't let something like that go. Number one, it was a charity show. Number two, I was pregnant. And number three, he worked there in my heyday in ECW, so I felt like he was part of our family.
Looking back when you were like going over the business stuff with him, did it seem like he was being shady at all? Like when you think back to conversations?
Yes, because there was always a song and dance like, oh, I can't give you this number now, I can't do this now, just give me a couple of days, this and that. I had a password to check like the seating arrangements. He didn't like the amount that I was charging. I mean, it was my show. I could do whatever I want. I paid him the money to rent it. You know what I mean? So why wasn't I in charge of everything?
So I know we have some kids in the audience today, and I just want to tell you that a lot of stuff in the world is wonderful, and some stuff in the world is wrong. There's nothing to me more wrong than Francine not being allowed in the ECW arena and Robbie E allowed in there.
Yeah, just doesn't seem right.
I don't know.
Think of your travesty in the world today.
I can't say I was told like you're banned or you're not allowed. For me, I just feel like
You're banning yourself, so you don't attack
yes,
this.
well, if there's a confrontation, I will either cry or commit murder. So we don't want either of that to happen. So I will just stay home.
All right, well then, so we'll get off that before you get more mad here at the table. So to change it up, to show that anything can happen in wrestling, an interesting story of how you first got connected in wrestling. I remember you said on the podcast that you won a contest, right?
Oh,
with your friend.
Sure. Yes, no, not even with my friend. A long time ago, I was like 18, 19 years old. I don't know if anybody remembers this. There was a network called Video Jukebox.
Anybody? Video Jukebox?
Anyone? Sure. I think you do.
There would be a number, there would be a phone number on the screen, right?
Yes.
And you could call for like $1.99 a minute or $4.99 a minute, and you could actually request a song.
You can request a video,
Right, and
yes.
you would pay money to see your song on TV.
Yeah, you can see your song on TV.
Things have changed a lot.
You might
Things have
even
changed a
see
lot.
your name under the, requested by Matt or whatever it was. But they were having a contest, and it was like a WrestleMania contest, and you had to send in like a postcard. And so I sent in like a handful of postcards, and I guess no one else entered because I won like the grand prize and first prize and second prize. I think I was the only one who entered.
Which is weird because back then wrestling was so big and the box was big. That is kind of.
I kept getting packages saying, "Oh, here's your other gift," and
Hypothetically, did you send a picture of yourself too, or just
I did not.
Okay, just
I didn't. No, but the grand prize was, and I was living in Philadelphia, so I wasn't far from New York at all, but it was a flight to New York. It was $500 spending cash, and I had front row seats to Raw.
Yeah,
Cool, you know, as a fan, and I never followed wrestling, so I was like a new fan. So I thought this was great, and I remember, I don't know if I said this, but I remember when we pulled up in a limo, and I had a driver, and he escorted us into the building. And back then, I don't know if Raw was general admission, but the line was going around the corner. They booed me because I walked like right past the line. I walked right in the building, and I got booed. So.
Is that the first time
That was the first time I was a heel. Yeah, exactly.
Now, of course, you're lovely today,
Oh, thank
but how old were you at the time?
I was maybe 19.
The 19-year-old Francine, you're hobnobbing with, you know, what we know are the highest quality of people, that is professional wrestlers.
Yes.
So did anybody hit on you? Did anybody was creepy with you? Or did you have a pretty good time?
Everyone.
Yeah.
The party was in Madison Square Garden. It was on the top floor. They have like it's like a sports room, because there was like pictures of like basketball players and football players, I remember. And they sat us at a table, and then it was like Lex Luger, Jim Duggan, Tatanka, I don't even remember, maybe the Steiners, I don't remember who was there. But I remember I was posing and Lex was next to me and somebody made a joke, and back then I didn't get it, but now I do, and I'm not gonna repeat it. But I left alone, so.
It's an interesting time in WWE history, because you'd be like, Mantar, you pass the salt, Bastion Booger, and you please hand over the rules.
Yeah.
So did you have interest in getting involved in the industry beyond being a fan before that point, or did that experience make you say, hey, I'm around wrestlers, it's fun, I want to be part of this?
So I met a guy named Blackjack Brown. Do you know Blackjack?
No.
Okay, he was a...
I don't know anyone. What we established on the one-ended show is I really don't know.
Just to take you back, Francis.
If it doesn't have to do with me.
Well, last week we had...
It's all about Rob.
Last week we had Leaping Lady Profo on the show.
Ah.
And the way he talks is interesting, because he'll say, I worked with Nick Poulos, have you heard of him? You know, or he'll say, you know, and then I was in Memphis Wrestling, do you know about that? And so every time Robbie was on the spot, and he was just like, no, I don't
To the
know.
point where at the end I was just like, dude, I don't know.
It was great. All right, go ahead.
What was I saying now? Sidetrack.
Sorry.
So anyway, Blackjack
Blackjack
Brown.
Brown.
Yeah, so when I sat in the front row at Raw, apparently the same guy sat there every show, and this big dude was like, hey, I'm a photographer, I do indies. But I don't even think I knew what an indie was, because it was just like Raw and that was it. And I said, oh, okay, and he's like, if you ever want to be a valet, here's my number. And I said, oh, okay, and he gave me magazines and his card, and I had his card. And I think my girlfriend was like, just call him and see what he says, like see if he's BSing or see if he's legit or whatever. And I ended up calling him and just briefly spoke to him, and he said, oh, I can get you $50 to work this show, but it was like far in New York, and I wasn't gonna join. And I said, no, I don't wanna do that, forget it. I never spoke to him again. And then I went up a second time to Raw with a different girlfriend, and he was there again. And he's like, have you changed your mind? Do you want to be a valet? And I'm like, no, I just want to watch the show. No intention of getting into the business whatsoever. About a year later is when I watched ECW for the first time. Then I wanted to get into the business.
And then from there, watching it, how did that connect you to actually get into it?
I watched the program for maybe a month or two, and I was
How was that back then? What was it on? 'Cause
It was on
like late at night.
Sports Channel Philadelphia at 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
Oh, because you were from Philly, so it had a good
I
time.
lived in
See, where I was
Philadelphia.
from, it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah, New York
Got
was
it.
late. Yeah, so I was eating dinner in front of the TV, and I was working down in Center City as a life insurance. I did data processing, and I hated it. And I was looking for something to do. Oh, I'll just call this number and become a pro wrestler. That's so easy. But guess what? I did it. It worked out for me. Bob Ortiz, who is a ring announcer. Okay, you know who he is? Very good.
Yep, I know who he is. Thank you. Bob Ortiz again.
Bob and Lex ran the hotline for ECW. Lex is his wife.
Okay.
They ran the hotline, and there was a commercial. It was like, do you want to be a manager, a wrestler, a valet, a referee? Call
Send in your money today.
Well, they didn't say the money part, but I did call the number.
Just $2,500.
It was 15. It was 1,500, and you paid in 3 installments.
For a valet.
And that's what I trained to wrestle. But little did I know, Paul Heyman hated women's wrestling, so I never had to. But they did train me to wrestle. Just
You know,
never
I
had
haven't heard that before, but it makes sense, because we don't think about women being in matches in ECW. We think about, you know, the valets being, you know, in wrestling roles. That's something you heard from Paul Heyman, that I don't dig women's wrestling?
He told me right to my face, women's wrestling doesn't sell. I know how to use you. You're going to get over.
Do you agree with
Now,
that
take
now?
this as well.
I love the way he used me.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the way he used me.
Now you're gonna get chokeslammed tonight.
Well, that's the first night I met Paul, very first night, and I don't think I knew what that was, and he goes, what, you don't want to do it? I said, I'll absolutely do it, and he just said, and I said, am I looking for like a cue or something? He goes, no, he's just gonna rip you out of the chair, and I said, okay, so I just waited there, and ripped me out of the chair.
And the scene is that 911 was a wrestler for ECW who would come out and chokeslam people and then leave. But he grabbed you out of your chair, and you are this frail young thing and just destroyed you.
Yes, because I was the local beauty pageant winner, wink wink, and I was Miss Montgomeryville, and I was the timekeeper for the night. So I sat there through 2 or 3 matches, and then he came out, and then I think I said earlier, the best part was I never went back to the locker room. They took me straight out and put me in the car, and I went right home.
But the craziest thing for me about this is you had never hit a mat before, right? Like
Well, I was training.
Oh, you were training?
I was
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, but I never took a choke slam.
You didn't even know what it was.
I didn't know what it was, and then I looked at Paul, and he was like, what, you won't do it? I said, no, I'll do it. I said, but I don't know what it is. And he goes, he'll just grab you and go with it.
Looking back, don't you think that's a little crazy, knowing that you didn't know? You know what I mean? Like, what if you went the wrong way? Or...
Well, I think that maybe that was my test.
Yeah.
To see if I was gonna complain or if I was just gonna do it, and I just did it, and he was impressed, and he's like, and then I got a phone call, he's like, he wants you to come back. And I said, okay, I'll come back.
Guys, what do you think? If it's your first ever time of wrestling and they say you gotta get chokeslammed, you have no clue what it is, you're gonna let them do it?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, all wrestling fans are crazy.
If you're protected by a notoriously safe and experienced worker like 911.
I love Al, though, he is a great guy. Why, you wouldn't have did it? You're a dude, man.
I would've done it.
Is it-
Well, we've already established.
Is it a joke? Is it a punch? Is it a kick?
Yeah, but 18, you've been in the business 18 years?
19.
All right, 19, okay, so if you're getting your first break,
Yeah.
you're gonna do whatever?
I would have done it. I
Of
would've done
course.
it.
Come on.
Now, we didn't get too much into this in our podcast, but of course you mentioned Paul Heyman, and we know who Paul Heyman is now, but at the time, he's a guy doing everything he can to keep that ECW company going. Now, what was your experience? We've heard some great stories about, him sending people checks and giving them a FedEx number, and then, them saying, well, that's not enough numbers for a FedEx number, and he says, just add 4 zeros, So, what was your experience getting paid, and your experience in that Paul Heyman kind of Svengali cult leader slash...
What does that word mean?
It's like your Botox doctor, it's someone that you are beholden to,
Got it. All right, I get it. I still don't get it, but I get it.
So what was it like working with Paul Heyman as far as the money and also his leadership, where he can kind of get everybody on the same page and kind of rah-rah you to victory in spite of nothing?
Yeah, number one, Paul will tell you that the sky is green and the grass is blue, and you'll be like, you're 100% correct. That man he's the best speaker I've ever been in front of. Like, he should be a motivational speaker for real, because
Well, he got an 18-year-old to get a choke slam.
I was just going to say that.
No, I was 20. I think I was 20 by then, or 21, whatever. No, but he knew how to rally up the troops. I mean, if our morale was down, he would just talk to us, and then everybody would be like, yeah, rah, rah, rah. Everything he said, we believed. Everything. And for me, I believed it. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid like everybody says. I just loved the company so much. I wanted it to work out. So I had no other choice but to believe. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of us, we didn't have a million offers coming in from like WCW. I had an offer from WWF at the time, but for me, I thought I was too green to leave, and I didn't want to leave because I liked where Paul was going with me, and I liked being that big fish in a small pond. I didn't want to go to WWF. I figured they were going to lose me in the shuffle.
At that time, when ECW was on the up and up and everything was so good, did you think it was going to last forever?
Oh, yeah.
Did everyone think that?
Yeah,
Like,
we
you
did.
never saw what was happening?
No, I didn't, and I even went as far, like, because, being a woman in the business, like, no one really wants to see a 50-year-old running around in ringside. Like, let's cross me. No offense to the girls that are working now that are 50. I shouldn't have said that.
Or Triple H, or Shawn Michaels.
No, that's fine. But you know what I'm trying to say. So I actually went up on Mondays, and I was trying to learn production. And I would watch Paul put the shows together. And I said, because I just wanted to stay with the company in some capacity, let me sell tickets, let me do this, let me do that. And he's like, oh, you have a lot of time in front of the camera. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to learn I want to learn what you do. Like, it's interesting, like, to watch that crazy mind working, you know? So I did that for a very long time, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to.
Well, what was that? How did, so the end of ECW, take us through that.
So we started bouncing checks, and there was a point where there were like 10 checks in a row that were bounced. I also had my clothes paid for, and so I was running up a credit card bill. Nobody knew, I guess it's out of the bag, but who cares? We've been out for 20 years, now it doesn't matter. And so I had like the credit card bill, and then
you had a ECW credit card?
No, I would just give my bill and he would.
ECW couldn't qualify.
We didn't. Our credit was poor. No, but so yeah, so he took care of me for the longest time, you know, and to be honest with you, I was making a lot more money than a lot of the guys were. But, so the check started bouncing, and then, you know, when the check bounces, the bank would charge you like $35 for a bounce check fee. And I just went to Paul and I said, look, I have 10 checks here and I have all these fees. And he paid me everything that he owed me. So that was clear. But then there were other things, like I went to Japan and I worked pay-per-views and never got the money for that. Like I ended up, I think he owed me like $50,000.
50? 50?
Yeah.
That's still...
Yeah, and we all filed, like, when the bankruptcy went through, like, there were guys that were owed way more than me, and no one ever got any money from it.
Did you have that sense of betrayal that others did when they found and they turned on USA Network and they see Paul Heyman walking out as an announcer for WWE, owing everybody the money that he owed them, and ECW going into bankruptcy?
I was told ahead of time that he took the job, so I was prepared for it.
And how did you feel about it?
See, there was still no closure. There still isn't any closure for me because there's so many stories that are floating around. I will never, ever be mad at Paul. Like, he is why I'm sitting here right now. So I can't hold a grudge in that sense. However, I do feel bad that our last show he didn't come to. It was Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He wasn't there. I kind of feel bad that, you know, we didn't get a final speech saying I did everything that I could, but this is the way it's going. Because I did stay loyal for, 7 years. And it was like, part of my life was dying at that point. None of us were prepared to get another job. We didn't know how we were going to make a living. Like, it was a really hard situation to be involved in. But I will never bury him. Because even when I went to the fake ECW, he was there and he tried to help me out as much as he can. So, I mean, he does have a good heart. I don't know what went down, but I'm not mad at him for it.
Looking back, don't you think how cool would have been if like it was planned for the last show and it would have been able to be at the arena? If you guys
Oh, God, yeah, Pine Bluff, I mean, no offense to Pine Bluff.
That's what I mean, out of all the places to look
Yeah.
back as the last show where you
I
guys
just
were all
wanted him
together.
to come, though. It would have been nice. Like, when we didn't see him there, we were like, oh, we know. And then, like, by the end,
What, he was at every house show?
he was coming to all the shows, and then he didn't come to that one.
So you did, yeah.
And then, Tommy was running the locker room, and then he was like, Paul's not here, this is the last show. And I was like, what? And maybe I just was so naive, I didn't want to admit it, but then everybody's out there and they're doing like the beer, and I'm just in the back, I'm just crying. And Sandman had just bought a bar in Delaware, and he's like, you're gonna work for me, girl, don't worry, you have a job. And that didn't last, because I worked there for 3 days, and it was just a mess.
Yeah, I can imagine a bar run by Sandman.
It was fun, I mean,
Sounds like a cool
it was called Hacks, too.
Where did all the beer go? The owner passed all the beer against his head.
He was drinking all the
Shut it down.
strawberries at the point, but yeah, so.
So there's a little bit of time in between the end of ECW proper and the WWE ECW. Were you in the business? Were you trying to stay in the business? What moves were you making? And how happy were you when you found out maybe ECW was taking back?
So we went bankrupt in 2001. I got a call towards the end. 2002 is when TNA started. And I worked for TNA in the very beginning, and they had no idea how to use me there. And I signed the contract for like 4 shows, and I did all 4, but Jerry Jarrett's just like, we don't know what to do. And I was just like, I can tell you what to do, do this, and no, that's not what we want to do here. It's a different company, and da-da-da. So it didn't work out there, so I just went back to indies. And I worked indies from 2002 until 2006, and I was working every single weekend, and I was making more money on the indies than I was working for Paul.
Well, your check's clear, so that.
It was cash.
Yeah, clear.
It's cash, yeah.
And then what, 2006 is when
2005,
WWE?
well,
ECW?
2005, we had the One Night Stand pay-per-view, so they called me for that. So Shane Douglas was doing his reunion show, I think that Friday, and then that Sunday, Vince was doing the One Night Stand, so I was on both of them. I was a surprise for the Sunday show, so they made me like put a coat over my head and they had to smuggle me in. Nobody cares if I'm there, and I was ridiculous, but I did both shows, and then I get a, that's what I thought.
That's funny.
Then I get a call saying they're bringing it back. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Oh, they're bringing it back. And I was like yeah, XFL bringing it, like, what is this, you know? And they were like, no, we're gonna bring it back, and you're gonna do the same thing that you did for Paul. And I was just like, I don't believe it. And well, you know, you either take a chance or you lose out on an opportunity. So I said, well, I'll sign for a year. And no, you have to sign for 3 years because they want to know that you're loyal. I knew I wasn't going to last 3 years, but I signed and I did nothing.
Were you excited when you first heard about it? Like, did you think maybe this could be a thing?
I wasn't excited. I was nervous, and I knew that this was my last big run. So I said, let me take a chance, see if I can make some money. But I had a feeling that I wasn't going to be used properly.
Was part of it because you just didn't have confidence in the WWE to handle the ECW brand? Like, a lot of us saw that coming, like, they're not going to get it, it's not going to be the same thing, it's not going to work out.
Sometimes when you're promised the world, you kind of figure it's not going to happen. And so, and no fault to like Dreamer or anybody who talked to me before I signed my deal, but I just got a funny feeling in my stomach, and I was just like, I don't think I'm going to last for 3 years. I'm probably going to get released. I don't think they're going to know what to do with me, but I'll give it a shot, because sometimes a pessimist is wrong. And I wanted to try and be optimistic because I knew it was my last run. I was 34 years old, which is kind of old in the business, you know what I mean? So I said, let's just give it a go. And when I started, first night in, oh, you're doing bikini contest. And I was just like, I never did bikini contest in my life. And now I'm this old woman, and you're putting me in a bikini next to a 19-year-old.
Next to Kelly.
You're killing
Thank you so much.
me. And Barbie, I love her, but she had no experience whatsoever. And like, we had to do a cat fight, and I literally had to pick her up and put her on top of me, and then pick her up and put her to the side. She had no clue what to do. And she's come a really long way, but it was rough. Back then was rough.
So that's how it ended for Francine. Francine, what are you up to these days?
It did not end.
It did not end?
No.
Robbie, you know your turn.
Come
How
on.
dare you? I'm sitting here. I'm still going. It's not over. You have to change the title of this show. It has
We're
not
talking
ended.
about just how each run ended. That's how that run ended.
Oh, that one ended very, very
And the
sadly,
best run of your life
by
is
the way.
going on right now. What are you up to right now?
My mom. It's the best thing I could ever done.
I mean, my son is in the audience, and I can tell you parenthood is kind of overrated. But for you, it's kind of what you do now. That's kind of your full-time gig, is really being the mother of your kid.
You aspired to be a professional wrestler, like at a young age.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a mother.
Oh, awesome.
Wrestling fell into my lap by accident, and I took the ball and I ran. But in the back of my head, I would have left it in a minute if I could have got married and been a mother. And I met my husband at 34. I met my husband right when my run started with the fake ECW. And so I just wanted to like get married, get pregnant, have children. I'd have probably 5 kids if I was younger. I have 2, and I'm blessed because they're healthy. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
Very good, guys. Thank you, Francine.